Hello? Is that you, Michael? Where are you? We had a final meeting scheduled for tomorrow, right? I was worried because you didn't show up on time. Oh, about that. I'm not going. What? I was at a loss for words at Michael's unexpected reply. What do you mean? I don't understand. That's because I'm not coming to your place. I've decided to call off the wedding. What are you talking about? It's utterly senseless to say something like that the day before the ceremony, isn't it? I've been thinking, and I just don't think it'll work out with you. You're a woman, yet you hold a higher position than me and earn more. I can't marry someone like that and live with regret all my life. Excuse me? I thought he had understood about my job and position, which he knew about for a long time. There were snide remarks, but I thought he understood in his own way. So why bring this up now? That's why I've decided to marry the girl I'm currently dating. I just submitted the marriage license. Marrying? Not with me, but another woman? I couldn't immediately grasp the meaning of Michael's words. Was he dating someone else while with me? Was I being two-timed? Was it that woman's voice on the phone the other day? He's already submitted the marriage license? As I searched for words to reply, perhaps mistaking my shock for something else, Michael continued with a half-smile. I'd rather be with a young, sweet girl who's submissive than a plain, older woman like you. Ditching an old lady like you was the right choice. Hearing those words, all the swirling emotions in my head vanished. Then, my honest response came out. Oh, really? Thanks for breaking up with me. What? My name is Maple, a 40-year-old employee. I've been working at my current company for almost 20 years since graduating from college. The workplace is full of nice people, and I enjoy my job. As a result, I've performed well and now work as the head of the sales department. I found my job in this favorable environment fulfilling, but I had a fiancé. I always thought I'd stay single, but I met Michael through a setup arranged by my parents. I'm an only child, so I understand my parents' anxiety about me staying single forever. With that in mind, I started dating Michael with marriage in mind, and we eventually got engaged. Michael was a salesperson at a company that does business with my father's company. My father and the president of Michael's company are old friends, and they still go out for drinks occasionally. Michael was known as an excellent employee, and my father, on the president's request, set up a meeting between us. Initially, I wasn't keen on the idea. I had a vague desire to marry, but I didn't want to through an arranged meeting. Dad, can you call off this meeting? I'm not seriously thinking of marrying, and it wouldn't be fair to meet with that mindset. Just give it a try, okay? Don't think too hard about it. Just see it as an opportunity to meet someone new. I was gently turning it down, but my father insisted so much that I finally caved in, agreeing to meet just once. Michael, true to his role in sales, was adept at closing the distance. The conversation flowed easily, and time flew by. I thought I wouldn't mind meeting him again. That's how our relationship continued and eventually led to engagement. However, lately, Michael has been acting a bit strange. He's normal most of the time, but when it comes to work, he can be quite harsh towards me. Hey, wanna go out somewhere on our next day off? Maybe take a drive? Michael suggested one evening after work. As I arrived home, I received a call from him inviting me on a date. Sorry, I have to go on a business trip next week. I'll be working through the weekend. Can we do it another day? My job involves a lot of travel, and I often end up working on weekends. While I do get time off in lieu of this, it means that my free days rarely align with Michael's. We often don't see each other for more than a week at a time. Feeling guilty for having to decline his invitation due to my business trip, I noticed a change in Michael's tone when I told him about it. Oh, I see. Being a department head, you're really busy. Guess you don't have time for me, he said, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by sarcasm. Michael, the same age as me and a manager, seemed to feel inferior to me, though I never minded our difference in positions. I had sensed this, so I usually avoided talking about my work. But now, it was unavoidable. Don't talk like that. I feel bad, but I have work. Of course, your work should come first. Good luck with it, he said, abruptly ending the call. I looked at my dark smartphone screen and sighed. I never intended to neglect Michael because of work. Sure, Sometimes our schedules don't match, but we always try to make the most of the days we can spend together. I couldn't understand why Michael wouldn't try to see things from my perspective. Even though we couldn't meet often, we kept in touch through social media. Lately, however, his responses had become infrequent. How about dinner after work this Friday? I found a nice place. One day during lunch break, I sent a message to Michael. Usually, he would read my messages right away, but this time, I didn't get a reply until after 8 p.m. I've got overtime on Friday. Can't make it. He replied curtly. Michael rarely worked late before. I thought it was unusual, but at that time, I figured he must be really busy with work. I was grateful that he managed to reply even amidst his busy schedule. That's how I saw it. But from then on, his attitude began to change significantly. I'm not great at initiating contact. So it was often Michael who used to reach out to me. But now, he hardly ever does. When I send him messages, he sometimes reads them without replying. Or just sends a short response. He's been swamped with work. Working late every day and sometimes on weekends. After this went on for several weeks, I decided to call him. Today is Saturday. Normally, Michael should be off too. I've been calling for a while, but there's no answer. I can't reach the answering machine either, so I kept listening to the persistent ringing. Just when I was about to hang up, Michael answered the phone. What? Michael's voice was noticeably curt. It sounded irritable. Are you okay right now? I haven't seen you for a while, so I thought I'd call. If it's not urgent, can I hang up? I'm swamped with work right now. I felt a bit uneasy as Michael quickly tried to end the call. He said he was working, but the background was noisy, not like an office environment. It's not urgent, but I was wondering since you haven't been replying to my messages. I've told you before, haven't I? I'm busy with work. You, Maple, should understand this feeling, right? I want to focus on my job. Michael let out an obviously loud sigh, seemingly eager to end the call. He was more prickly than usual. Continuing the conversation would probably remain like this. I see. Just take care not to overdo it. Yeah, then. As I was about to end the call, I heard a voice from the other end. Hey Michael, who's on the phone? The voice had a sweetly drawn-out way of speaking. It was a woman's voice. Who? By the time I thought this, the call had ended. Was I mistaken? But I clearly heard her call Michael by his first name. Was Michael really working? My mind was filled with question marks. We continued to lead lives that barely intersected. Honestly, I was beginning to question the point of marrying Michael. Ever since that call the other day, doubts had started to form in my mind. Should I go through with this marriage or call it off? The date for the ceremony is already set. If I'm going to call it off, the sooner the better. Until now, even if Michael got grumpy about work topics, we'd go out together when our days off aligned. It wasn't a bad relationship. But then, the sudden deterioration in our relationship seemed to stem from Michael's increased overtime and working weekends. Avoiding me under the guise of work, could he be cheating? Such suspicions began to arise. The woman's voice on the phone also bothered me. To clear my mind from these feelings, I decided to do what I can at the moment. I made up my mind about that. But Michael's attitude remained the same. We communicated mostly through social media, rarely speaking on the phone. Still, Michael never brought up canceling the wedding. Considering we had invited relatives and other stakeholders, I couldn't just stop preparing for the ceremony. It was unthinkable that Michael, always busy with work, was handling the preparations alone. Just in case, I contacted the venue, but as I suspected, Michael hadn't been in touch with the staff. I was the one advancing the preparations for our wedding alone. And now, the day before the wedding. I had spent a lot of time preparing for tomorrow. Today, Michael was supposed to come to my house for a final meeting. I really had to talk to him in person today. However, he didn't show up even after the scheduled time. Wondering what happened, I called him, and it sounded like he was outside. Hello? Michael? Where are you? We're supposed to have our final meeting for tomorrow's ceremony. I was worried because you didn't show up on time. Oh, that. I'm not gonna go. What? I was at a loss for words at Michael's unexpected reply. What do you mean? I don't understand. That's what I'm saying. I'm not coming to your place. I've decided to call off the wedding. What are you talking about? Canceling the day before the ceremony, isn't that extremely unreasonable? I was confused. Honestly, I hadn't been looking forward to it with all my heart. But if we canceled the day before, it would inconvenience so many people. I would have to notify the venue, inform relatives and guests about the cancellation. More than the sadness or shock of not being able to marry Michael, I was preoccupied with what I needed to do next. Ignoring my silence, Michael continued to speak. I've been thinking about it, and I just can't see us working out. You, a woman, holding a higher position and earning more than me. I can't spend my life feeling inferior being married to someone like that. Excuse me? He had known about my job and position for a long time. There were snide remarks, but I thought Michael had come to understand. But what is this sudden change of heart? That's why I've decided to marry the girl I'm with now. I just filed our marriage license. Marry? Not with me, but another woman? I couldn't immediately grasp the meaning of Michael's words. Was he seeing another woman while with me? Was I being two-timed? The woman from the phone call before, was she the one? They've already filed the marriage license? As I searched for words, Michael, mistaking my shock for distress, continued with a half-laugh. A girl who's young and sweetly dependent is way better than an older, charmless woman like you. Dumping an old hag like you is the right choice. Hearing those words, all the swirling emotions in my head just disappeared. And then my honest reaction came out. Oh, is that so? Thanks for breaking up with me. Eh? Michael, who had assumed I would be upset, seemed surprised by my unexpected response. Honestly, I've been wondering whether it was right to marry you. Thanks to your unreasonable behavior, now I can retaliate without holding back. Thank you. What? Wait, Maple, what do you mean? Michael, who had betrayed me first, seemed confused. Did he expect me to be crying and begging? I had no feelings left for Michael as a fiancé. We're now complete strangers. Don't ever call me again. Goodbye. Michael seemed to be saying something on the other end, but I mercilessly hung up the phone. Perhaps it's better this happened than to marry with doubts. However, canceling the wedding means a lot of follow-up work. Thinking about it, I can't rest until I get back at Michael. I decided to seek revenge on Michael. About a week after the wedding was called off, Michael called. He sounded frantic. Hey! What the heck is going on? He yelled as soon as I picked up. You don't need to yell, I can hear you. What do you want? I told you not to call me again. That's not important right now. There's a huge mess at my work. You did something, didn't you? A mess? What exactly? When I pressed for details, Michael stumbled over his words. I imagined him now, surely looking frustrated. At work, rumors are spreading that I was two-timing. Only someone like you would do this. Is this your way of getting back at me? How vindictive. It's not a rumor, it's the truth. And since we invited colleagues from both our workplaces to the wedding, it's natural they'd be curious why it was suddenly called off. So, maybe. But, I even got called in by the president today. He seemed desperate to paint me as the villain. Michael was trying hard to find reasons to blame me. But regarding the broken engagement, Michael is clearly at fault. I responded firmly. Of course. My father must have talked about it. What do you mean? Why would your father be involved? Actually, my father is the president of his company. He knows Michael's company's president personally, and they even interact privately. So, it was natural for my father to talk to the president when his daughter's wedding got cancelled due to Michael's selfish reasons. I conveyed this fact calmly to Michael. What? Your father is the president of that major company? They're one of our biggest clients. Didn't I tell you? Originally, my father planned to let my husband take over the company. He wanted me to marry someone capable. But no matter how professionally competent, if someone's character is trash, it's pointless. My father dotes on me, but in a way, he's old-fashioned, thinking of handing over the business to a son-in-law rather than his daughter. Knowing my father's feelings, I convinced myself to marry Michael, but now it seems like a ridiculous idea. So, if I had married you, I could have been the next president of that company. That's impossible now.
No, it's not impossible.
After a pause, Michael suddenly blurted out an astonishing proposition.
Maple, marry me.
Excuse me?
I'll divorce my current wife. Let's get married.
His absurd offer made me laugh dryly. Are you out of your mind? Why would I marry a man who easily switches women?
Think about it. We were once considering marriage. We can make it work.
Michael tried to appease me with a softer tone. I won't be fooled. I decided to play my final trump card. Emily, was it? So now you're going to dump a young and cute girl for an older woman for money? At the mention of Emily, Michael fell silent. He must be scrambling to figure out how I knew her name. What are you talking about? Who's Emily? You must be mistaken. Did you think I wouldn't know? When you suddenly started working late and weekends, avoiding me blatantly, it's obvious to suspect something. Michael fell silent again. He must be trying to concoct an excuse. Not giving him the time to do so, I continued. The woman you were cheating with, Emily, she's a new employee at your company, right? I heard there were rumors about you two being close at work. I hired a detective to thoroughly investigate it.
A detective? You did something so underhanded.
Michael's tone drastically changed from trying to appease me to outrage. You were the one who betrayed me first. Don't get angry now. But, doing things secretly behind my back. No, this must be your way of showing love, right? You did this because you were worried, didn't you? Michael was muttering to himself, trying to convince himself of his own twisted logic. You wanted to be with me, so you investigated me. I'm sorry for getting mad. I won't do anything to worry you anymore, let's get married. I felt almost terrified at how Michael twisted the facts to suit himself. The thought of spending a lifetime with such a person was nothing short of a nightmare. Enough already. I can't marry someone who only thinks about money. Too bad you missed your chance to marry into wealth. I was completely fed up with Michael's self-centeredness. The way he could manipulate things for his own benefit was almost a talent in its own right. I don't want to talk to someone who only makes me feel uncomfortable. I've told you before, don't call me again. I cut off the call with a firm attitude. Then I blocked all of Michael's contact information. Keeping his contact would only lead to more situations like today. I no longer wanted any involvement with Michael. One day, my father called me, and I decided to visit my parents' home. I have a good relationship with my parents, but due to my busy work schedule, I hadn't been able to visit home much. When I arrived, my father apologized to me. Maple, I'm sorry. It's my fault that you got hurt. I apologize. It seemed my father thought I was shocked about being dumped by Michael. I decided to be honest about my feelings. Dad, don't apologize. Honestly, I'm not sad that I didn't marry Michael. What do you mean? Dad looked up and stared straight into my eyes. I looked back at him and shared my feelings. I've always thought that maybe it's okay to stay single. But knowing you wanted a son-in-law to take over the family business, I thought marrying Michael would fulfill your dream. Maple. But, with such a mindset, even if I had married, it wouldn't have lasted long. I should have been honest about my feelings. I'm sorry. I apologized to my father. He wrapped his arm around my shoulder. No, you did nothing wrong. It's my fault for starting all this. And the ones who should be punished are Michael and his affair partner. My father's voice grew firmer. His brows furrowed, his expression filled with anger. There's a satisfying story I have. Want to hear it? A satisfying story? Yes. A story where the bad guys get their comeuppance. According to my father, Michael and his affair partner, Emily, were facing a tough time at their company. It started when my father told Michael's company's president he would cancel their business deal. My father couldn't trust a person who cheated while engaged and unilaterally broke off the engagement the day before the wedding. He didn't want to do business with a company that employed such a person. That's what he said. The president begged for a reconsideration, but my father was clear, as long as Michael was there, he had no intention of continuing the business. Being acquaintances with the president for many years, I didn't want to end things over this. Dad sighed softly. But it didn't end there. Dad continued the story. The day after talking to the president, my father was called in to discuss further. He was told about Michael's misdeeds. Michael was well regarded for his sales performance at the company. However, it turned out he had been taking credit for his subordinates' and colleagues' work. His rise to the position of manager wasn't due to his own abilities. Maybe he felt inferior to me because he knew he lacked true ability. I found him rather pitiful. At Michael's company, rumors of his affair with Emily had spread. On top of that, a major business deal was at risk because of Michael. His subordinates and colleagues, tired of tolerating such a fallen man, brought evidence to the president. It seems the president was prepared to fire Michael because of this. Michael was fired, and his affair partner was demoted with a pay cut to a less significant department, so the president asked to restart the business with us. I agreed since that was the case. My father said with a smile. It became such a big deal. I'm sorry. I've caused so much trouble for you and the president. It's okay for me. But I felt concerned about causing trouble due to my personal affairs. I apologized later, and he said he was glad to get rid of the trouble, which relieved me a bit. I told my father I wanted to thank the president again. Regardless of the circumstances, I had caused trouble due to my relationship with Michael. I felt sorry for the president, but at the same time, I was relieved that Michael and Emily faced such fitting retribution. After splitting with Michael, I moved out of the house I had been living in. It was to avoid Michael coming around, and that decision turned out to be correct when an incident occurred. Michael had been waiting for me outside my workplace, timing it with my office's closing hour. Honestly, I didn't even want to see his face, but if Michael caused any problems, at least there were people from my office around for safety. I tried to ignore him and head home, but Michael tried to grab my arm. Maple, I've been looking for you. I need to talk to you. I quickly dodged his hand and reluctantly faced him. He looked a bit haggard. And his complexion wasn't good. What do you want, coming to my workplace like this? It's a nuisance. I went to your house, but you've moved, right? You didn't tell me where, so I had to come to your workplace. Why would I tell a stranger where I've moved to? I need to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about. Please go home. As I tried to ignore Michael and leave, he moved in front of me and suddenly started shouting. Please, I'm begging you, help me. His action, devoid of any pride, left me stunned. It was a busy area in front of my workplace, with many people passing by. I couldn't believe Michael would do something like this in public, so unlike him. Stop it, what if someone sees us? I won't stop until you agree to talk to me. Fine. I'll listen, but that's it. Hearing my words, Michael finally stood up. Actually, I need a favor. He began to speak hesitantly, looking down. My company is demanding I pay compensation because the deal with your father's company was cancelled. It was a significant deal, so the amount is huge. That's why I need your help. I recalled my father saying the business had resumed, but perhaps there was more damage beyond my father's company. Regardless, I had no obligation to help him. How dare you ask me for help? It's all your own doing. How could you even think to ask me? Because you are a manager, so you earn well, and even if you don't have enough, your father is a wealthy president, right? I thought you, as my former fiancé, would want to help. He must be desperate. Trying to find any way to get the money. But his unwillingness to struggle and work hard was typical of Michael. Always looking for the easy way out. Never considering others, just self-centered thinking. I decided it was time to give him a final push away. What are you even talking about? As if I'd lend you anything. In fact, I'm going to claim damages for the broken engagement. Be prepared. What? You're asking for more money from someone who just said they're in financial trouble? Don't you have any humanity? Michael, who had naively thought a display of desperation might win my sympathy, now openly expressed his anger upon being refused help and further learning I intended to claim damages. It's only fair to be charged for damages after you unilaterally broke off our engagement for selfish reasons. Plus, I had to cover the cancellation fees for the wedding. I'll be claiming that from you too. You're a demon. How can you not want to help someone in this weak state? I have no feelings of sympathy or pity for you. And stop calling me Maple in such a familiar way, it's disgusting. Despite being married to Emily, Michael still treated me as if I belonged to him, which disgusted me. Despite my desire to cut off all ties, I wonder why he continues to make me feel so uncomfortable.
But you are the only one I can rely on. Help me, this is the last time I'm asking.
No matter what you say, it's impossible. I don't have a penny to waste on you. If you keep bothering me, I'll call the police. Leave now if you don't want that. Realizing that I was adamant and wouldn't yield, Michael, with a look of despair on his face, slowly walked away from me. This should sever any remaining ties with him. Watching Michael's downfall didn't stir any emotions in me. It confirmed that I had completely moved on from him. I was determined to look forward. My father mentioned that Michael and Emily had to take out loans to pay the compensation demanded by their company. They borrowed from unsavory sources and were struggling with aggressive collection efforts. They tried to rely on family and relatives to repay the debt, but no one was willing to help after learning about the circumstances of our broken engagement. Michael was fired from his company and struggled to find re-employment, as rumors about him taking credit for others' work had spread, making it difficult for him to get hired in nearby companies. On the other hand, Emily, although she was moved to a different department and avoided being fired, found her workplace unbearable due to persistent rumors about her affair and apparently chose to resign voluntarily. Both of them are now reportedly living day-to-day, juggling part-time jobs. As for me, I continued to excel in my job. It seemed I was more suited to this kind of life. One day, while relaxing at home, my father approached me. "Maple, would you consider taking over my company?" "What?" "Not immediately, of course. But if you're interested, I'd like to train you as my successor." It seemed my father had reevaluated his thoughts. Rather than forcing me into marriage for succession, he now considered me as his successor. For me, who had been determined to dedicate myself to my career, my father's words felt like a recognition of my efforts at work, and I was genuinely pleased.
Thank you. I feel suited for work. I don't know much about running a company, but I'd like to take on the challenge.
My father smiled warmly at my response.
I'm glad to hear that. There's no rush, so keep doing your best at your current job. Encouraged by his words, I felt determined to someday take over my father's legacy.